What is going on, everybody? I am back today to talk about a new release movie that just came to VOD recently that I'll be honest, when I saw the trailer to this in the theater, I wasn't 100% inclined to go watch the movie because it felt exactly like Sons of Anarchy, but taking place in the 1960s. And I'm a huge fan of Sons of Anarchy, but it just looked relatively tame in comparison. But I found out who directed this film, and the director has made quite a few films that I've actually really enjoyed. And the cast of this movie was really stacked. And so I decided to sit down now that it's available on VOD and watch it at home. And the movie I'm going to be discussing with you today is The Bikeriders. The Bikeriders is directed by Jeff Nichols. After a chance encounter at a local bar, strong-willed Kathy is inextricably drawn to Benny, the newest member of Midwestern Motorcycle Club, the Vandals, led by enigmatic Johnny. Much like the country around it, the club begins to evolve, transforming from a gathering place for local outsiders into a dangerous underworld of violence, forcing Benny to choose between Kathy and his loyalty to the club. So, as I said, I was not super excited to watch this movie, but I watched it anyway because of the talent involved and the director of this film. And this movie is mediocre in every sense of the word. It is like one of the most run-of-the-mill, bland movies that you could make about a biker gang. I feel like even the violence and the violent moments in this are so incredibly tame. None of it really impacted me emotionally. And that's not to say that this is a terrible movie by any means, because it is incredibly well shot and there are some really solid performances here. I just didn't take much away from this movie by the end of it, and I'll talk about that as a whole when I break the movie down. So that plot description was very thorough, but simply at the beginning of the film, we're introduced to Kathy, played by Jodie Comer, who is essentially telling us everything that we need to know about this biker club while she's doing an interview with Danny, played by Mike Faist. And she's kind of reminiscing her getting into her relationship with Benny, Austin Butler's character, how their relationship started, and how he got involved in the motorcycle club led by Johnny, played by Tom Hardy. And the entirety of the film is her kind of reflecting on things that happened through their lives, the dangers that they were put in, the conflict that existed between these characters, and how they ended up to where they are today. So as I said, I felt like this movie was incredibly run-of-the-mill and bland, but if I want to say some positives, the movie's really well shot. I think it captures like the essence of the Midwest really well, especially in this very specific time period. I liked a lot of the shot sequences. I thought they paid pretty good attention to detail in the framing and the way that the film was color graded, and it really created an environment that was very easy to immerse yourself into. I enjoyed a lot of the performances in this, even though some of the Midwestern accents are like embarrassingly bad. You have a lot of English actors that are playing these Midwestern boys, and it's just kind of embarrassing to watch them attempt these accents. But there are a lot of really compelling moments in their performances as well, so I don't want to take away from that. It was interesting enough that like for this almost 2-hour movie, I was invested enough for it to hold my attention. It wasn't like I was constantly like bored out of my mind or anything because of the talent involved in this movie. The problem is the story is just so bland. It's just a whatever type of narrative. Like everything going on in front of you, there is no real tension between these characters outside of like a really surface level conflict, and everything that pops up in the way of this biker gang continuing on is so happenstance in a way that feels incredibly irritating. I know at the beginning of the review I compared it to Sons of Anarchy, and Sons of Anarchy I actually did a review on my channel a while ago because I rewatched it, and I still to this day think it is one of the best television shows to ever air. And that is because you're taking this concept of a motorcycle gang and building on it over long periods of time, and you're really able to flesh out these characters and what makes them tick. And none of them are likable people. All of them make horrible mistakes, but the writing is so good that they can make you care for even the most awful person for at least one episode. And they're involved in all of these different crime fronts. The police are always out to get them. There's all of these things that create this really immersive environment that you just never want the show to end. This movie, like, they're not really involved in anything. They're not really doing anything to get them in trouble other than getting into little qualms. And like the way that general society perceives these biker gangs, like, I didn't feel any stakes in any moments. It was kind of just like a hangout movie, like these guys spending time together, and then eventually something would pop up that would make them a little on edge, and then it would go away, and then you just go to the next set of scenes, and it was just cyclical in that way, to where it was like, okay, when am I going to be invested in like something really intense? And even like Austin Butler's character, who is supposed to be one of the main characters you focus on, who I feel like didn't really speak a whole lot in this movie. He didn't have a ton of lines of dialogue, and his character was really uninteresting. Like, even when his character is going through a lot, there's no like real emotionality to it. There's nothing to keep you heavily invested in the moment to really care when his character is in danger. Tom Hardy's character, who is like running the biker gang, like, there's nothing menacing about him. Like, normally the leaders of these biker gangs, like especially when you watch Sons of Anarchy, they have to have grit. They have to be willing to like stand up to people and not back down. And I just didn't find there to be anything intimidating about his character. He was just kind of a guy. Like, he gets into a couple of like scuffles with these guys in the gang who try to challenge him, but all those scenes weren't that interesting, and they don't frame it in a way that like showcases that there's any kind of stakes to him losing his position, or like any stakes surrounding the overall fate of the club. And the movie just continues that cyclical nature for 2 hours of like, okay, here's one set of sequences where something happens. Like, the most intense moment in the entire movie surrounds Jodie Comer's character, who almost experiences like a violent attack. But I feel like even the way that that comes about, it's just so random. Like, the set of sequences and like the people involved, and it's just like the director didn't know how to write this to where any of the conflict in the movie felt natural or realistic. It was like, oh, we've sat for a while without anything really going on, and we've got to add something into this movie, so let's like add something in here that may get a shock out of the audience. And it just became irritating after a while. And it's a weird movie to talk about because I don't think it's horrible. Like, I was never like, oh man, this is like the worst thing I've ever watched, but I also just didn't care. That's why the beginning of the review sums it up perfectly. It's like the most mediocre movie you could imagine. Like, if it was on, you wouldn't really care all that much, but you're also not going to get anything out of it. And I'm actually kind of surprised by the number of people who are like, oh man, this was really solid. This was really great, because I feel like a lot of the character writing was just incredibly mediocre. And I don't know, I just left this feeling virtually nothing. And I wouldn't recommend it, because I would just tell you to go watch Sons of Anarchy instead. So have you seen the Bikeriders? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Leave me a comment down below and let me know what you thought. I thought this movie was the definition of mediocre. It's not bad by any means, but it's also not very good. As always, if you can like the video and subscribe to the channel, helps me out a lot and lets me know the type of content you're looking for. I'm always putting out new material and look forward to getting more out for you in the near future. And as always, everyone, thank you so much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.